Agent Jackson sat on the park bench, his eyes scanning the area with a mix of curiosity and wariness. As a black FBI agent, he was no stranger to the occasional suspicious glance, but today, something felt different. The air was thick with tension, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He had been working on a high-profile case, and he wondered if his presence in the park had something to do with it. As he sat there, lost in thought, 3 police officers approached him, their expressions stern and their movements deliberate. "You," one of them barked, "you look suspicious. What are you doing here?" The officer's tone was laced with a hint of disdain, and Agent Jackson's instincts immediately went on high alert. He straightened his posture, his heart racing with a mix of anger and caution. "Officers, I'm Agent Jackson with the FBI. I'm on duty, just taking a break." He reached into his pocket, fumbling for his badge, but the officers were having none of it. "FBI, huh?" the second officer sneered. "You expect us to believe that? We've got a report of an impersonator in the area, and you fit the description." The officers closed in, their hands hovering near their holsters, their eyes scanning him with a mixture of skepticism and hostility. Agent Jackson held up his hands, trying to placate the situation. "Please, let me show you my identification. I'm not here to cause any trouble." But the officers were not listening, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. One of them, a tall, imposing figure with a thick beard, took a step closer, his hand resting on his gun. "Hands in the air," the third officer barked. "We're going to need to search your belongings." They roughly grabbed his backpack, rummaging through its contents, their faces twisted with disdain. Agent Jackson felt a surge of anger and humiliation as they tossed his personal belongings onto the ground, including his phone, wallet, and a family photo. As the situation escalated, Agent Jackson knew he had to act quickly. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and dropped his wallet onto the ground. One of the officers bent down to pick it up, and his eyes widened in shock as he saw the FBI badge. But just as the officers were about to apologize and back off, a commotion broke out at the edge of the park. A group of protesters, carrying signs and chanting slogans, began to march towards the scene. They were a diverse group, but their message was clear: justice for Jamal, a young black man who had been killed by police in a nearby town just a week ago. The officers' eyes darted towards the protesters, their faces tense with anxiety. Agent Jackson saw an opportunity to defuse the situation and stepped forward, his hands still raised. "Wait, officers. Let's not make this situation any worse. I'm willing to cooperate, but you need to listen to me." The officers hesitated, unsure of what to do. The protesters, sensing an opportunity, began to close in, their chants growing louder. Agent Jackson took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice calm and authoritative. "I understand that tensions are running high, but we need to work together to find a solution. I'm not just an FBI agent, I'm a member of this community. I've lost loved ones to police brutality, and I know what it's like to be profiled and harassed. But I also know that we can do better. We can work together to build trust and create a safer, more just society for everyone." The protesters paused, taken aback by Agent Jackson's words. The officers, too, seemed to relax, their faces softening slightly. For a moment, it seemed like the situation might be resolved peacefully. But just as it seemed like things were calming down, a figure emerged from the crowd. It was a young woman, her face twisted with anger and grief. She pushed her way to the front of the crowd and confronted the officers. "You're the ones who killed my brother," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "You're the ones who ruined our lives." The officers took a step back, their eyes darting towards Agent Jackson. He knew that he had to act quickly to prevent the situation from escalating further. He stepped forward, his hands still raised, and began to speak. "I'm so sorry for your loss," he said, his voice filled with empathy. "I know that no words can bring your brother back, but I want you to know that I'm committed to justice. I'm committed to making sure that those responsible are held accountable. The woman's eyes locked onto Agent Jackson's, and for a moment, he saw a glimmer of hope. She nodded, slowly, and the protesters began to disperse, their chants fading into the distance. As the situation was brought under control, the officer's supervisor arrived, summoned by a concerned citizen who had witnessed the interaction. The supervisor's face darkened as he listened to the officer's account, and he immediately placed them on suspension pending further investigation. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable," the supervisor said, his voice laced with disappointment. "We will not tolerate this type of bias and prejudice in our department." He turned to Agent Jackson, offering a sincere apology and a promise to address the issue thoroughly. As Agent Jackson walked away, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and sadness. He had faced yet another incident of racial profiling, a reality all too familiar to him. But this time, justice had been served, and he hoped that the consequences would serve as a wake-up call to the officers involved, and to the entire department. But as he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The protesters were still out there, their chants echoing in his mind. The woman's face was etched in his memory, her anger and grief a reminder of the work. Agent Jackson knew that he had a long road ahead of him, but he was determined to make a difference. He would continue to fight for justice, no matter the cost. And as he walked away from the park, he felt a sense of purpose, a sense of duty to the community that he served.